The cave smelled like sulfur and old ash, the kind of place Joe would have told Ethan Cross to avoid. "Me New York die," Joe used to say back in the village, the old tongue phrase that meant some doors are better left shut. But Joe was gone now, and Ethan had long since stopped listening to the sensible part of his own brain. He was only passing through the Cindervale Mountains because the eastern road had been washed out by the spring floods. The cave was supposed to be nothing, a place to wait out the rain, nothing high, we use KRNY high, as the mountain folk said, no reason to go, no reason to stay. Just shelter. Just a few hours. Then he heard the sound. It was not a roar. Not even close. It was something far more dangerous, a small, wet, hiccuping sob, like a child trying very hard not to cry and failing completely. Ethan Cross was 34 years old. He had survived 2 wars, a plague year, and a merchant guild that had once put a bounty on his left ear specifically. He was not a sentimental man. He followed the sound anyway. Deep in the cave, past a curtain of hanging obsidian rock that caught the torchlight like broken mirrors, he found the nest. It had been a magnificent thing once. The dragon scales pressed into the rock walls still glittered, deep amber and copper, the color of autumn catching fire. Whoever had built this nest had been enormous. Ancient. The kind of creature that made empires rethink their border policies. But that dragon was gone. What remained was a single egg, cracked open at the base, and one very small, very miserable creature sitting in the ruins of its own hatching. The hatchling, Ember, Ethan would later name her, because of the way her tiny chest glowed faintly orange with suppressed flame, was no bigger than a large house cat. Her scales were dull, the color of cold charcoal, and 3 of her 4 wings were still crumpled against her back, not yet unfurled. She had enormous golden eyes, and those eyes were currently fixed on Ethan with an expression he recognized immediately. It was the look of someone who had been waiting a very long time for someone to come, and had almost given up. Joe would have said to leave, some part of Ethan noted. "Me New York die. Some doors are better left shut." Ember sneezed. A small, pathetic cone of flame shot out and singed Ethan's boot. She immediately looked horrified at herself. Ethan looked down at his boot. Looked back at her. "Well," he said. "I've had worse introductions." He stayed the night. Just the one night, he told himself, practical reasons, the rain hadn't stopped, the road wasn't safe. He fed her a piece of dried venison from his pack, which she sniffed with extreme suspicion and then ate in approximately 0.3 seconds. He built a small fire near the cave entrance, far enough that it wouldn't alarm her, close enough that the warmth reached both of them. She crept closer to him at some point in the dark. He pretended not to notice. By morning, she had fallen asleep curled against his side, her small body radiating warmth like an ember, hence the name, though he hadn't said it aloud yet. He lay very still for a long time, looking at the cave ceiling, cataloging the reasons he absolutely could not take a baby dragon with him. The list was long and entirely reasonable. He packed it away. Stood up carefully. Shouldered his pack. Ember opened one golden eye. The sound she made was not a word. Hatchlings didn't speak for years, everyone knew that. Dragon cognition developed slowly, language last of all. But the syllable she pushed out, the small rough shape of it, landed in Ethan's chest like an arrow he hadn't seen coming. Dad. Probably not, he told himself immediately. Probably just a sound. She was an infant, she had just hatched, it was coincidence and sleep-muddled noise, and he was projecting because he hadn't slept enough and the sulfur was doing something to his thinking. She said it again. Clearer this time. Both eyes open now, watching him with absolute, uncomplicated certainty. Dad. Ethan Cross, who had survived 2 wars, a plague year, and a merchant guild's targeted vengeance, stood very still for a very long time. Then he put his pack down. "All right," he said quietly. "But you're not sleeping on the bedroll." "That's my bedroll. We're setting ground rules." Ember made a sound that was definitely a laugh, even if dragon scholars would have called it something more technical. The thing about humans, the elder races often noted with a mixture of admiration and bafflement, was the stubbornness. Not the cleverness, plenty of species were clever. Not the violence, that was depressingly common. But the stubbornness. The specific human ability to decide that something mattered, and then simply refuse to let go, regardless of what the universe suggested. Ethan Cross was a case study in that quality. He spent the next week researching dragon hatchling care from a single mildewed book he found in the next town, arguing with a hedge who told him Ember was certainly cursed, and hand-feeding a baby dragon who had already learned to fake injury when she wanted extra meat. He built her a traveling harness from leather scraps. He learned, through trial and significant eyebrow loss, that Ember's fire ran hot when she was startled and cold blue when she was content. She was content, increasingly, whenever he was near. Word spread, as word did. A human traveling with a dragon hatchling was not easily overlooked. Some people were afraid. Some were calculating, a dragon, even a small one, was worth a fortune in scales or in alliance. Men came, occasionally, with nets or offers. Ethan had grown up in a world where the powerful took what they wanted from the vulnerable, and had spent most of his adult life deciding that was not, in fact, how things had to be. The men with nets left without their nets. The men with offers left with a clearer understanding of what no meant. 3 months in, Ember was the size of a large dog. Her scales had shifted to deep copper gold, catching the light the way her mother's nest walls had. Her fourth wing had unfurled at last, slightly crooked, which gave her a lopsided hover that Ethan found completely undignified and completely endearing. She had expanded her vocabulary to approximately 11 words, deployed with increasing precision. Dad remained her most used. No was second, reserved for vegetables. Fire was third, delivered as both noun and enthusiastic threat. One evening, camped at the edge of the Veyrath forest, Ethan was sharpening his knife when she climbed onto his knee, still thinking, apparently, that she was the size she had been at hatching, and pressed her head against his collarbone. He put the knife down. Put his arm around her. "You know," he said, "I was only supposed to stay one night." Ember made the sound that was a laugh. "Don't be smug. It's unbecoming." She made the sound again, louder. He looked up at the stars through the forest canopy. He thought about Joe, about the old saying, "Me New York die, some doors are better left shut." He thought about the cave, and the sound of a small creature crying alone in the dark, and the way she had looked at him like he was the answer to a question she didn't yet have words for. He thought about how, sometimes, the doors that look like they should be shut are actually the ones you were always supposed to walk through. Ember was asleep against his chest, warm as a coal, her breath coming in slow dragon rhythms. Ethan Cross, who had not planned any of this, who had only been passing through, pulled his cloak around both of them and stayed. Some choices, he had learned, were not made once. They were made every morning, every time you had the option to leave and didn't. He had made this one every morning for 3 months. He planned to keep making it. The elder races would tell you that humans are short-lived, irrational, and entirely too emotional for their own good. They would also tell you, quietly, among themselves, in the long memory of species that have watched the centuries turn, that there is nothing in any world quite as formidable as a human who has decided that something is worth protecting. Ember would grow, eventually, to the size of a ship. Her fire would level mountains. Her wingspan would darken the sky over a dozen kingdoms, and those kingdoms would learn to make peace with their neighbors rather than explain her to. But for now, she was small and warm and sleeping. And the human stayed.